Welcome to Voices on Art, the Van Horn Gallery podcast hosted by Daniela Steinfeld. This episode is in English. For other languages, go to our YouTube channel Van Horn Gallery and use the subtitles tool. I'm Daniela Steinfeld, and this podcast is about my personal and also about a lot of other people's enthusiasm for art. We talk art, life, and how art changes our life in so many ways. The podcast comes to you in English or German, so go to our YouTube channel Van Horn Gallery if you need subtitles. You can subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the platform of your choice. I hope to get you on board and tell you interesting stories you enjoy listening to. And after each episode, I give you my personal book recommendations, so stay tuned. Thank you. Today we're sitting in the spaces of the Kunstpalast in Düsseldorf with Felicity Korn, who is the head of the collections of the 20th and 21st century, and she is also the deputy to the general director Felix Kremer. Correct?
Yes, that's
okay.
correct.
That's correct. Yeah, okay. So, Felicity, thank you for taking the time.
Thank
you. And also, I was
me.
wondering, because we are speaking in English, and because you said it's more or less your second mother tongue. Why is that? How is that?
Well, you could say it is my mother tongue.
Oh, it is your mother tongue?
Because my mom's from Ireland, from Northern Ireland, so I grew up bilingual.
But you grew up in Bremen?
I grew up in Bremen. I also studied abroad, though. I studied in Glasgow for a year. And I was just raised with two languages. It's very easy. So because I always like to speak in English to address a broader audience. Mm-hmm. And it's good because with the video we have the opportunity to have subtitles and everything. So we can offer English for our English and international listeners. And because I didn't know that, but I knew that you grew up in Bremen, that you went to school in Bremen. And as always, I'm always interested in how did art enter your life? Why did you think I have to study art history, I have to do something with art? Well, when I went to Glasgow after my Abitur, my A-levels, I wanted to do English literature. And I only took art history as sort of a second course, because I had to take another course. So I did history and art history. And it was more of a coincidence. Through that course, which was very art historical, it was very traditional, I find a passion for love, and it turned out I had far better results in art history than in English literature, and I also found out I do not want to be a writer, and I cannot relate to, I still love books, I love making books, luckily I can still make books.
Yes, you can do both.
But it's just a different approach to books.
Yeah, it's a different approach. But then is it very clear when you study art history, especially classical art history, that you would go into museum or into some scientific job, or how does that start? Usually you do internships, and it's kind of like you take what is possible, you take what you can get.
Yeah, well, I did 1 year in Glasgow only doing classical art history, and then I decided to go back to Germany and actually do a university degree here. And I had different options. I was offered a place in Heidelberg or in Freiburg or in Karlsruhe at the Hochschule für Gestaltung, the University of Applied Arts or of Arts and Design. And I decided to go to Karlsruhe because they had a curatorial approach to art history. I also didn't do art history classical. In German they call it Kunstwissenschaft.
Yeah.
So art theory, more or less, and media theory. And after that 1 year in Glasgow and doing very classical sort of, this is our Impressionism seminar and this is Middle Ages, I was like, maybe not.
Maybe contemporary.
Maybe not me, maybe more contemporary and a more theoretical approach that would be more thematic and more thinking about the contexts of during which the artist worked and lived and thought, and it turned out that was a good decision. And also I could do exhibition design, and you had to do a practical, and you had to do
philosophical.
Thank you. So it was a very good, the university in Karlsruhe was excellent because you actually study along alongside artists and graphic designers and product designers. So you actually have like a little art bubble of your own at university, and you develop projects together, and it's a very atypical approach to art history, I would say.
Because you see how people make art actually.
Yeah.
And you're involved in the process, which is very often lacking for a lot of people that study art history or that even work in museums, that they never ever touched an artwork, they never worked closely during the process of creating an artwork, and so it's very often like, oh, art, you know. So whereas people, you know, that are closer to the artists, they have a more hands-on approach and then better understand also what artists actually do.
Well, it's just, I guess it's a different approach, but it was through that study that I found it very early that I wanted to do exhibitions and I wanted to work in a museum context and definitely not a scientific context. And yeah, I started doing internships early on. So I did several in Bremen, where I come from, at the Kunsthalle and in the Weserburg. And I also did an internship at a publisher and in a gallery. I tried to sort of get my bearings on different forms of art institutions to find out where I
you
feel
want to go
at home, where I want to go.
Where you want to go, which is also luxury to be able to do that in a way. Huh?
Yeah, it was really nice.
It is. And also in the end you meet a lot of people, you form a lot of relations. Probably you know a lot of people your generation and a little bit older who are now in the different institutions in Germany. So you have a kind of network on your own, where we know it's much easier than to call somebody for example, a loan or for a collaboration or all these things.
No, that helps. But I also thought it helped to see how does a gallery work firsthand to actually do a placement there. And museums, there's no one museum. Every museum is so different. No.
There's no one gallery.
No.
I mean, it's really that I think I find it, in a way, I find the term gallery so insufficient because Galeria Kaufhof, you know, it's also a gallery. You know, what does that mean? You know, I mean, sort of like a gallery is, as far as I understand, it's more or less it's an aisle with windows where you can walk through or where things are on display. So that's a gallery. And so I find it kind of like I never felt at home with that term. And as every museum is very individual, so a lot of galleries, most galleries are very, very individual, but also I think museums like in Frankfurt, where you were at the Städel, yes, because it's both with S. It's starting with an S. I'm sorry. At the Städel and also at the Kunstpalast, I think, as far as I know, that museums have to obey to other rules than, for example, galleries have, because they're also paid. You know, by the citizens of the city. Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of, you have another responsibility towards the art, towards the institution, and that always, there's a certain code of conduct probably you have to adhere to. And so, as I already mentioned, you were at the Städel, as you mentioned, and so that was after Karlsruhe, you had the possibility to work in Frankfurt.
Yeah, I started in a trainee at the ZKM actually. I worked there for a little bit. But then I got this offer from Felix Kremer at the Städel. And it was a bit weird because I'd studied contemporary art. That was totally my focus at university, and I wasn't really interested in historical positions, as I mentioned. And by coincidence, we got to know each other. He was there during an interview for the contemporary position, and a couple months later he had a position to fill, and he remembered me and he said, you know, I know 20th century isn't really your thing, or even 19th century, but would you consider doing it anyway? Because he thought that having someone that sort of has a contemporary approach to 19th and 20th century art would be more interesting than just sort of your traditional student that would have studied, like I said, the different isms and thinks very sort of the way university degrees unfortunately often are organized.
Is that true?
I didn't, like I said, I didn't do a traditional university art historical
degree. No, but when you went to Frankfurt
do I have a
and
different
you got
view?
the job,
I think I do, yeah.
So how?
Well, my first project was Emil Nolde. We did a huge retrospective on him in 2014, and I knew my Nolde up and down, and I thought it was interesting because I think I approached his work not so much through the art. Of course, the art was at the essence of the exhibition, but there was lots of questions that you can ask with Nolde. And for example, what we worked on really intensely was his conduct during National Socialism and how much he was involved in political
that
context.
was a big discussion, yeah.
And yeah, it was a huge discussion that went straight up to Angela Merkel.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of the work that we did. And it just showed me that there's a lot of potential with a contemporary sort of, what's relevant today, what are questions that the audience and we ask ourselves that we can find in the 20th century art and to keep it relevant. So I think, it helped.
I mean, I always think that when I go, whatever, to a museum that shows older art back to the Renaissance or even further, that when, for example, painting, you can, for me, it's always contemporary in that way that you can always see in the material. You can still see the brush stroke. You can still, and this is as now as it was in the moment when it
still
was.
Very current, yeah.
Yeah. So it's always like, it's almost like time travel. That's so fascinating for me to look at old art where it's this century, this moment where the painter did that, it's exactly now, it didn't age.
Conserved, yeah.
Yeah, so, and this is also something where I think we can really, really take even a material look into the past. It's not just embedded in the history of that time.
No.
It's kind of embedded in what did it mean to make art in this time? What did it mean to be an artist in this time? And at that time, okay, it was, I think, mostly the cleros, the Pope, and people that were considering art as important. And so there were not museums in the sense we know now, or curators, or heads of collection. But so I would like to, because you went here also with Felix Kremer from Frankfurt, so now you're the deputy to him being the general director in Kunstpalast in Düsseldorf. And what was because I think it's also, because you have a family, it's kind of a big commitment to say, okay, I'm going to, take that jump with the whole family, do the whole. So what was, first of all, what was tempting to do that here, and how does it, working here, differs from for example, from working in Frankfurt?
Well, the collection that we had in Frankfurt was 1800 to 1945. That was the one we were responsible for. And the projects were very different. They were very large-scale exhibitions with a huge audience sort of aim that we were going for. We did Monet and we did Van Gogh, we sort of left Van Gogh there, but we did Battle of the Sexes, we did Emil Nolde, like I said. So we did huge exhibitions that would attract a lot of not just audience, but also press and so on. And the collection is excellent in Frankfurt. It's really like a dream collection. There's lots of highlights, masterpieces of art history that you can do these stories around like we did in our projects. And here I think the approach is a bit different because the collection is so different. The audience is also different. The exhibitions that we did in Frankfurt, I don't think we would do them here. So the themes that we play here are just, they are more Düsseldorf, more Rhineland, because I think essentially those are the people we want to attract to visit the museum. And you always have to see, what is happening in the city or in even the region and what are the people interested in. Frankfurt is like, so the sort of Bürgergesellschaft is a lot stronger. It's very much more academic, I would say, than in Düsseldorf. In Düsseldorf, you have a very lively art scene that you don't have in Frankfurt. So you have many more galleries, many, many artists. Both cities, of course, have important academies, art academies.
Yeah.
But I would say not as many artists stay in Frankfurt as they do here.
No, that's true. And it also tends to go back to that when probably 10, 15 years ago, people would still go to Berlin, and now they rather stay here or in the area, at least, which I think, I think really this is probably the biggest asset in Düsseldorf, is to having the academy, even if in quality it's kind of like changing, but that doesn't matter because kind of like the grassroots, the
overall,
base, overall the base is still here, that the artists are here, and in the end they are kind of like the hopefully fertile soil from which we can take the fruit and then do something with it. Yeah.
And it's in Frankfurt, here we look more to the story of Düsseldorf itself. Of course, this is the city's art museum. Yeah. Frankfurt, it was sort of it was like a Bürger museum, so it was just a bit of a different understanding, I would say. And here our themes are always, they have something to do with Düsseldorf or with our collection. And I always say when I tell sort of international colleagues or something and they wouldn't be so familiar with Düsseldorf, we're always so lucky because there's so many things that happened in Düsseldorf or that are connected to Düsseldorf.
They can still relate to.
Yeah, the local is not, it's not very small. It can be very wide.
Well, the local is not necessarily the local.
Yeah.
I mean, when we look back, in the last talk I did with Daniel Hook, he was also looking back to the history of the Rhineland, which is a very, very strong history. And then people say always, but that's old, it's old news, it's the old Bundesrepublik, so old Germany, and it has nothing to do with now, which is absolutely not true, because he always built on what was there, and some things are even closer than you would hope or think of sometimes. And I mean, I grew up with this museum, for example, because I'm from Düsseldorf. So it was the Museum am Ehrenhof. And it was, in that time, like in the late 60s, early 70s, it was the museum to go to, because the Kunstsammlung didn't exist. Yeah. And so there is kind of like, since Jan Wellem, who founded the collection, more or less, it's kind of like this long red thread going into the present moment. And it's also a very diverse thread, because this museum is full of so many diverse collections. Yeah. I mean, we sometimes refer to it as the small Victoria and Albert Museum.
It's a charming way to put it.
It's a very charming, but this is like
the bonsai.
Yeah, that's a bonsai. Yes, but you also refer to, it used to be, when there was a lot of fashion here, it used to be Düsseldorf was Klein Paris, Little Paris, which is also a huge exaggeration. But in a way, what always fascinates me is that it's such a small city, and it has so much culture in it.
It's very dense, yeah.
It's so much culture, with the institutions, with the artists, the academy, the galleries, all of that, and probably not so much as it was, but fashion and all these things, even a new opera soon. And still, what is really... sometimes the big question is, so little outside of Düsseldorf, so not many people know about it, I mean, sometimes...
That can be good and bad, though.
Yeah, well, that can be good and bad. Sometimes, it is like when you say, well, I studied at the Kunstakademie Düsseldorf in New York, people know better, because they remember all those big names that were here, than people that are from the rest of Germany. And that is, all for me, always the question. So... how to generate that not, to just generate and to show the quality of the very, very diverse things that happen here, up to Kunstsammlung Nordrhein-Westfalen and the KIT and the Kunsthalle, which is closed now, but Kunstverein, Kunstpalast, all of that. And I think, since you and Felix Kremer are here, the Kunstpalast has really taken its role to represent art to the citizens of Düsseldorf, to say we are really the city museum. So, which is shown in the big growth of the Circle of Friends, and a lot of press also the museum gets. So how do you decide what is important to show in the city? What is that? I mean, because that could be anything.
It could be anything.
It could be a lot.
Yeah, it's a huge array of things. The good thing is we now have the collection again. I think that helps a lot in the programming, since we redid the whole building, or the collection part of the building. And we have the exhibition program that sort of adds on to that, so we can do lots of stuff in the collection, also have interventions or different projects. Like now we have the census coming up, or we have the flowers, or we're going to have other projects in the upcoming years. And then the good thing about the exhibition space is we can always have 2 exhibitions at the same time, or 3 even, because we have so many. We definitely don't lack in space.
Yeah, you have a lot of space, but it's difficult space.
Some people would say it's difficult. You get to know it after a while.
You get to work with it.
Yeah, you get to work with it. I think the good thing is that we always have these 2 exhibitions that we can play quite differently. So we would try to have 2 shows that don't have anything to do with each other when you look at them at first sight. But then there always seems to be something that brings them together, and ideally they attract different audiences. And because we're in Germany, people buy a ticket. You can only buy 1 ticket for the entire Kunstpalast. So hopefully they will visit the other exhibition as well, because they paid for it.
Yeah.
And then they find something there that might be more rewarding than the exhibition they actually came to see. So
did you get feedback on that, if that's happening?
Yeah, I think it happens a lot, actually. And one example was Anadol, for example, when we had the big Anadol installation. Lots of young people came to see that. And I think they liked it, but some of them liked the oil sketches from the 19th century even more. And they would have never gone to see such a conservative, traditional exhibition on oil painting, but they find it highly fascinating what the artist did, the story about the artist going outside and drawing in nature, and how that changed painting. So yeah, we always have those moments where we have the feeling that we can, through our programming, we can interest people in different aspects, and it's actually a luxury because you have one project that sort of takes the lead, but then you can also do something else on the side.
Do you have the feeling that the role of museums, or let's say of this specific museum, we're just talking about Kunstpalast, that it changed in the past years, or that it has to change? That museums take on a different role, and if yes, what is that, or what could it be?
I don't know. It's a big question, even if we're just looking at the Kunstpalast.
Yeah.
We have a team that does the programming. It's not just Felix Kremer that decides it.
No,
but we
sure.
are a couple of people, and so we get input from sort of the press side or the communication side, and also from the sort of education department. And all together we discuss, where do we want to stand, where do we want to go? And I think we all know museums in general have to change if they want to keep up. It's one reason why we do so much program for kids, because we think that it's so important to get them at a very early stage, have them visit the museum, identify with the museum, have a good experience here, no matter what it is. So they, like you said, you grew up with the Kunstmuseum at the Ehrenhof, so they have this, so a museum plays a role in their life, and there's different programs that we've established to get them here. But I think our audiences are not automatically growing, and we have to keep up to speed to keep them interested and awake, and to give them the feeling that what we're doing here is a part of their life and not something that is a bubble or very far away or doesn't really concern them. I think you need to touch the people. There's so many things going on in our life. There's so much attention that we're competing with. And I think we're a bit different than other museums in our understanding that, yes, Netflix, that's what we're competing with. On a rainy Sunday afternoon in autumn, you can either watch Netflix or you can go to the museum. So you do have to think about this museum experience, how it can affect people.
Yes, but as obviously a museum cannot, change that fast.
No.
Like
step by
a
step.
Series on Netflix. Probably, I think often that museums, this might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but take more the role that churches used to have. So a museum could be a meditative experience. A museum could be where you probably even go to for a social gathering, you know, to go to the openings together, like the Friends, which is
a
always a very well,
yeah.
that's a community where you meet each other, and then you meet each other in front of the art, and then as art touches on so many different themes, you know, you can talk about these themes, or art also lets you relax a little bit, you know, because it's not like the bad news or the fake news or the news that, you know, always hammers on your attention, but you can also probably just stay in front of a work and just say, oh, okay, now I'm here, now I can let go all the stress, you know, because I mean, for us, it is our daily job in a good way, you know, but for others, they do it in their
free time.
In their free time. You know, so I always wonder, does the museum have to be, you know, an entertaining hub? And I
don't think it has to be that.
I don't think so.
No,
also,
not exclusively.
Yeah.
I think it's good to have fun at a museum. It's a positive experience.
Yeah, okay.
It can be a positive experience, but it's not the only positive experience. I think there's many different ways of experiencing a good time at a museum. And that's also what I tried to say with our exhibitions. We would maybe have one that would be more entertaining, but then on the other hand, we would have one that would be more theoretical or more critical. And they try to keep each other in balance. And we do have projects like the one we have on now, the female artist, that is hardcore research. Like
yes.
That is also the role of a museum, of course, to research art history, to open new spectrums, to open new topics. But we can also do a playful exhibition that would maybe give you impulses. I think sometimes when you look at our exhibitions, or it's even our campaigns really, you think that we're very, it's very sort of approachable, not necessarily in a good way. You could see it's screaming out very loud, but when you do go to visit the exhibitions, I think there's always a lot of depth there, or there's different ways of seeing them. So you have a lot of text that you can read, you don't have to read. And it's important to also, when the visitors enter the museum, to attract them. Everyone has a different need. So there's us, the professionals. Ideally, they also have a good time, but there's also the people that have never heard of what Baroque art is, and you need to get their attention too, and you don't want to lose it until they finish the exhibition. You want to keep them going. You need to give them impulses too. Or the motherhood exhibition, for example, it's a very straightforward theme that affects everyone, everyone, the whole world.
Yes, everyone has a mother.
Even though some men said to me, no, it's not really my topic. I was like,
well, even you have a mother.
I think you have a mother.
Yes, I think you have a mother.
But then when you went to visit the show, there was so many themes that were very, that went on a deep dive actually, and where you could talk a lot about how society works, how society is run, how we are affected by all of these mechanisms. And I think a good exhibition approaches people on different levels, so that you can visit it and have a good experience never mind where you're coming from.
So how is it with the trust in art? Because, you know, a lot of exhibitions I went to in museums now are very, very much explained. You know, so you have a lot of text, you have like a big touring program, pedagogic program, all of that. And okay, I'm a professional, so that's one thing. But I remember going to exhibitions where none of that, as a child, actually, when none of that was given, you know, because it was not so developed. And you just had to figure it out for yourself, you know, and you had to just trust the art. And this is something I'm sometimes missing, that I think like, okay, education and all of this, you know, low threshold, please, you know, to lower the threshold. I think very often I think you can do that and still trust in the works themselves, that they have, that art is not language, art is not there to serve a certain purpose. Art is there to open a space which we don't have in our regular lives, to show probably even something transcendental. So that, you know, I can ignore text and all of that and just see the artworks. But very often also the staging, not I'm not necessarily referring to Kunstpalast, but very often the staging is it's a lot of staging, so that people get an experience, so also the people that are not professionals. But I've been to a museum lately, a new museum, and it's like super high end, and people are just running into it because the low threshold is actually created through the building itself, through space. So I think space might also play a big role to create space that people have the feeling I can easily enter. And very often in museums that is not given. It's not easy to enter.
It's true.
It's hard to enter, or it's a big museum, but probably a small entrance.
We have that problem.
Exactly. So, and this is something, I think really to open the doors, not only metaphorically. I mean, I know that what you're doing is we try to open the doors, but the physical doors in a way have to also be or feel open, that you think, I can easily enter. It's very easy to go there. I don't have any hesitation. So yes, you have the architectural smaller door. So how do you work with that?
Well, it was a big thing when we did the new collection. Yeah. It was something we discussed a lot, and we also had the Palastpilotinnen, so the palace pilots. It was a committee of different citizens that advised us during the preparations for the presentation, and we asked them, what is, and it was only people that would not have an art background, that would not be attending museums regularly. Yeah. So
how did you get them?
We had in the Rheinische Post, in the newspaper here, we had an announcement. We had an ad, and there was over 1,000 people that applied.
Wow.
We were a bit overwhelmed.
Yeah. And how many did get the job?
20. Yeah.
From 1,000.
Yeah. And we ended with 17 or 18, I think. Yeah. It's when we opened the new collection, and I think they still identify very much with the Kunstpalast, and they gave us really important impulses as to how could we attract their attention, first of all to come here, but then also to keep them going when they're here. And yes, the feeling they have in rooms was really important to them, so to feel welcomed, they actually thought the texts were very important.
Oh, for them it was,
And they gave us really good advice on how to write the text. We're very strict with our text policy, everyone. There's so much work put into the text that nobody would see from the outside, but it goes through different stages of corrections and being approved, and different eyes, because in the end, what you lose is when you work here is, of course, the view from the outside, which is what the visitors have. So it's always really difficult to imagine yourself in the position that the visitors have. For us, it's very challenging, but we try. But they gave us good advice on how to write the text, how they would like the length of the text, the words you use in a text, how you explain things or not explain things, how important are descriptions. Because mostly, I don't have to explain what you can see in the picture. Every visitor can see it's a red square.
Yeah.
But what they want to know is, why is it red?
Yeah.
Why is it a square? And those are the answers they want to be given, but not with art historical explanations. They just want it approachable, which and it's not the same as being meaningless. You can do both, but it's quite difficult.
Language matters a lot. And we know there is this certain kind of, I read a lot of texts also when I had people, working for the gallery to make the press text. And very often it's a very alienating language, even for me. And I read this and I think I really don't even know what you're saying, So how much more is it for somebody who is not in the art world? So I find text super, super important, the way that you get good quality information, but in a sort of approachable way. So what was it that what was the most sort of this group of people, what was the most mentioned point by them?
For the text?
Not
or
only for
in
the
general?
Text, in general.
Well, it was also, for example, the colors. So it was really important for them that we put colors in the presentation, wall colors. We always thought of a very reduced presentation at first because we wanted the collection to be very different from the exhibitions, which are often, they have huge displays and attract a lot of attention. And they were like, no, you're gonna have to, you have to make the rooms friendly and welcoming and warm, and you want the people to be able to connect with the work, so they need to feel at home and in the space. You don't want the white cube that is cold and clean and neutral. You want them to sort of be, embraced by the space. So we went from having white walls to having lots of grey walls, and then having lots of colored walls, and then having wallpapers and photographs and stuff like that. And they helped us with, there's no two rooms that are the same color after each other. So every new room that you enter, you want a new story. You want a new, okay, this is where I am now. So you can, because it's over 40 rooms, if you walk through the whole collection, which most people don't. And you need to keep their attention going. They need to wake up and say, okay, this is something new. I can now engage again. They helped us with that a lot. And also with the selection of the works, they showed us that they're not like the highlights of the collection are of course important. And when you ask art historians, that's always the first works that will enter the collection display. But for these people, not so much. They were more interested in, okay, tell me the story of the Birkenstock sandal, which was firstly presented in the Kunstpalast. Those are the stories they like to hear. They want to have stories that they can relate to and that they can sort of engage into. They want to have stories that also touch them somehow. So I think every object has to tell a good story, and then it will enter the presentation. Otherwise, it's just going to stay in the storage.
Do you think at school or generally in society that visual education is lacking?
Yeah. I mean, I have a kid at school and she does not have any art lessons anymore. The German teacher does art and it's more like crafting. Nothing against crafting, is also really important, but they are not educated visually. But it doesn't, it matters, of course, but the good thing is every person has a visual approach, right?
Yeah.
Every person is visual, whether you want to or not.
Yes, but
like
this is exactly the thing. I mean, we are so visual. Our whole world is shaped visually. I mean, we have all the social media which are basically function visually, and still, I think we don't learn to use it properly. You know, we just take it like, it's just there. But, to really look, we don't learn. We just learn to consume. We don't learn to look actively at an artwork or so. So I think this is also, in a way, something, probably which is also the job of the museum.
Yeah.
To really
help people.
Not only to tell the stories, but also to help them develop their capacity of really looking properly at things.
Yeah, but I think it's quite easy to do that by arranging things in a certain way and combining artworks, and that's the good thing about our collection, because it's so diverse and rich. You can make very good combinations that would be unusual and then sort of make each other more interesting. Rather than having a gallery of paintings, you can have photography and sculpture and design and
so to keep the attention also going, so that people, because probably our attention span of each of us is going down a little bit. Yeah. I think so, really. If I remember my time at school, what I learned, and now it's like I don't think I'm capable of that anymore. Even reading. You're reading because of your job a lot, probably. But I find it sometimes even hard to keep on, because we're all used to, swipe, scroll. So it's kind of like getting harder. And I think these are all things we need for the future. I think we need to concentrate, to be able to concentrate. We need to be able to focus. We need to be able to understand right from wrong or false from, all these things to learn that more. And in a way, I find the museums as, the last places that keep up history. How would we know about the past, it's not only from writing, because always the winner writes. It's always, history is always written. We don't know the full history of things. This is like, in the female painters exhibition, this shows us a completely different history, which absolutely we know existed because the paintings are existing. They are reality. They were painted in a certain time by certain women, and those women were neglected, or most of them, not all, but mostly they were neglected, the career or the fame or the profession they deserve to have. So this exhibition, when I walked through it, I thought like, oh, this is an important exhibition, especially for art historians to learn to put this into the canon.
Yeah, and to learn there's no such thing as the history.
Exactly, there is not the history of art. So this is also something, but at least what we can rediscover this, museums can collect this. And this is also an important thing, to keep collecting not only preserving what is there, but also collecting the future history. So that means the history of our time, which is, I know, really a hardcore feat. It's very hard to decide what has to stay, what does not have to stay. Then all storage is full already, but more has to come. So how are you dealing with that?
Challenging, I think. But again, luckily, I think the sort of purpose of our museum is very clear. So we are conserving the artistry of the city of Düsseldorf, and that's a very rich artistry. So
those are good. It's already given.
Yeah, we have pretty strict sort of not boundaries, but sort of strict aims concerning our acquisition department. So when we look at what we want to buy, or even donations, we always look at what happened in the city, what do we have in our collection, where are gaps maybe that we need to fill, how can we tell a more inclusive story of the city's art scene, or what connects to the city's art scene, what are topics that were relevant here. But nevertheless, it's still difficult because the means, of course, are not endless.
No.
We try our best, and I'm pretty sure that, I don't know, in 20, 30 years, or maybe 50 years' time, people will look at what we bought, and some of it will be good, some of it will be rubbish, but then again, that perspective will also change again. So in 100 years, they will see it differently again. So
it's changing. It's constantly changing.
And I already have the same thing when I look at the acquisitions my predecessors did. Some of them are amazing, and they were it was amazing how they saw the potential of certain artists and the works that they bought at very low prices. Some of them. One example is Ella Natsui.
I just wanted to mention Ella Natsui. Fantastic work.
Fantastic work that wasn't on display for 20
acquired by
Jean-Hubert
Martin.
Yes, acquired by Martin for, I think it was 20,000 euros at the time, with the Africa Remix exhibition. And today, museums worldwide are envious of this piece that we have in our collection.
It is a fantastic, very large scale piece. And it hangs next to the Rubens, which is kind of like the signature piece of the Kunstpalast. And both of them work beautifully together. So that is also something you do in the collection, to kind of combine old and new, and in that case, not chronologically.
It's just that one room that isn't chronological.
Yeah, the rest is chronological.
The rest is chronological.
The rest is chronologically. Yeah. But when it comes to acquisitions now, I mean, it does not mean, although you're kind of like here to preserve the art history of the city of Düsseldorf, it does not mean that you only buy Düsseldorf artists.
No.
It has to connect to the collection.
Yes, yeah. So it might also be artists working worldwide, but often there's some point of departure that would be in, or it could be the themes that are current in our collection. So for example, African art. We have a lot of African art, so we do try to keep up with African art. Or artists that work between art and design, because we have such a big design collection where there are pieces that would connect these two collections also in the display. That is something we look at. That's what I said. There's definitely very many questions that you can ask our collection. And then they sort of broaden the spectrum of what we can show here.
Mm-hmm. And back to the Palastpiloten, which I find it a very, very good idea to do that, to really ask people that are from here but not necessarily pros in the art world, what do you want, what do you need from your museum? So are you still continuing that?
No, we sort of took a break after the collection was rehung, because that was the main thing, to redo the collection. It doesn't have anything to do with the exhibitions. I think a lot of the things they gave us we can use for exhibitions, but the programming, that wasn't something we discussed with them. We now have a new group of people for the NRW Forum. Mm-hmm. So because we're thinking of redoing the NRW Forum, or that's something that is up in discussion. But not the Palastpiloten.
Yeah. No, the NRW Forum has its own programming. Yeah. And is kind of like, it's not a museum, it's part of Kunstpalast, but the NRW Forum itself is not a classical museum.
No, it's not a museum. It only does temporary exhibitions.
It's more like a Kunsthalle, and does kind of like very, very theme of the day exhibitions.
Yeah, well, the audience we try to attract is just different. It's just younger, 20 to 40. Yeah. Even though I find that older people also like to go, but but that's what the themes we're trying to find that address a younger audience. Yeah, and it can be more experimental and a bit more cheeky, and hopefully also the programming isn't like in Kunstpalast. Now we're working on 29 because all the projects are lined up until 29.
Until 29.
Yeah, so 28 is fully booked, but at NRW Forum it would not be the same. We would try to be a bit more spontaneous also in our planning, so you can draw on current themes and events.
But that means also, so you never have like one space in Kunstpalast where you could be a little bit more flexible or react to things that are just...
Well, projects might always be cancelled, or there might always be something urgent that we would try to plan a bit more spontaneously, but technically they are lined up. Yeah, you have to do that because of course you need to acquire funds, you want to find partners, you need to set up the whole I'm working on multiple exhibitions at the same time, so it's what it sort of needs to have a certain safety also in the planning. I mean, there's huge budgets that we try to swing around, and it's a form of reliability, I think, also for the people here.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I have the feeling that you feel very responsible.
Yeah. I think that's our job.
But so it's not just like, oh, let's do it, it's like, oh no, we're really responsible to give something of value to the people. We're responsible here to the citizens of Düsseldorf and beyond to give the best we can do with this museum. Yeah, you try. So, and I don't take that for granted, because there's so many motivations why one could do what one does, in every job. So I have this feeling of a very strong responsibility, which comes with everything you do here and also the things you say right now. So. So what?
I want to get people interested in art. I mean,
that's the basic thing.
Yeah, I think so. I want to have people that have a good experience here, and it can make them thoughtful. It can make them. I did an exhibition on female war photographers. It was definitely not a happy space, but there was a lot of really, really important discussions that I had with the audience. And it was it was a very deep experience, well, very emotional. I've never before had people cry in my exhibition. But you can have that type of experience. Then we have Feldman now, Hans-Peter Feldman, a conceptual artist who discusses what is art. Who defines what's art? Why you're a museum? Why do you get to say what art is? Why can't the car that's turned upside down in the courtyard? Why is it not art? Or who says it's not art? So I think every project, every exhibition, every piece in the collection has this potential to get a conversation going, get some feeling back from your audience and have them engage somehow. And also they should learn that they can have different experiences here. So one time they leave an exhibition crying, and another time they leave it very very thoughtful. Another time they start making art at home, or they just laugh and have a good time. I don't know. Ideally, that's what happens. And there should always be a reason to come back.
Yeah, so what will be the reason to come back in 2026?
In 26, well, there's a couple things that are happening at the museum, but I'm working on an exhibition on Jörg Immendorf, Düsseldorf artist, who actually since 1982 hasn't had an exhibition in Düsseldorf. So it's the first retrospective here, even though he lived and worked here since his academy years, since the 60s. There was never a big show, and we're trying to change that. And I would say there was always sort of this storytelling of him as a Maler first. He sort of coined that term alongside others, and it's time to maybe take a new perspective on his oeuvre. There's a lot of things that you can contextualize differently, a lot of questions you can ask, also to his understanding of himself as an artist, of the role of an artist in society, to what extent art should be political, has to be political, how it addresses political questions, and it's very relevant today to ask those questions, I think. So, yeah, even though maybe he's not the most, I don't know, he's not a young artist, of course, but he's very much an artist of his time. And also what's really interesting is how you can see the story of the Bundesrepublik Deutschland alongside. He was born in 1945, the moment the Second World finished, the end of the Second World War, and lived until 2007. So it's quite the span in Western Germany that he covered. And I think his development actually always recurs to certain political events in Germany, and addresses a lot of issues that a younger generation wouldn't even be able to relate to so easily. So hopefully that'll also open their minds as to what has happened in this country in the last years, and makes them more aware of why things today are the way they are.
And where do we go from here?
I don't know.
You don't know.
Forward.
Yeah, forward. Okay. Yeah. So what do you think art can play for a role in moving forward? What's the role of the artist right now? Or not of the artist, of the museum. Of the museum.
Yeah, I think to keep people close, to make it a space that they like to go to with their families, with their friends. I think the museums should be close to the people, and like you said at the beginning, we have this huge growing artist circle of friends, and it means so much to us because they are our biggest supporters, and they are such fans of our works that give us such positive feedback also on what we're doing, and that show us that they can identify with what we see as the museum's purpose. So I hope that we can draw more people into that circle of friends, and that we can address the issues that they have and give them good experience here.
And what is your, when you look back through all the years, what you've done? I mean, you're still young, you know, but you all already have some experience in the arts. So is there one particular experience you made with an artwork which kind of like stayed with you, where you said like, oh, that was really absolutely special for me? Or with an exhibition?
Well, like I said, the Women War Photographers was important for me,
yeah.
I think. Also because most people would say those aren't artworks that you displayed, but I think...
because it was war photography.
Because it was war photography. All of the photographs, of course, were taken for press purposes. But it helped me to understand how we look at pictures in general, and how we can show people, to look around their world differently, and how pictures, of course, draw our attention in, how they ask certain questions, how they address certain topics, how we are surrounded by pictures in our everyday life and what they do with us, and how we can take the questions that these pictures ask into the museum and make a relevant exhibition out of it. But there's so many experiences, to be honest. It's really such a privilege in this job to be able to work closely with artists and try to understand more intensely what they're trying to do. Every studio visit is such a great one. There's of course a couple of artists that have passed away since we worked together, and there's lots of experiences there that I keep close. And I have to say, being able to do the rehang of the collection, a project that we worked on for 5 years, I think that's a huge privilege in an art historian's career. Yeah. That a city trusts you to redo a whole museum. That was pretty special. I don't think it's going to happen again.
Okay, so we both think like just look more at art.
Yes.
And learning by looking and by living with it. So Felicity, thank you so much.
Thank you, Daniela.
Yes, and see you very soon.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks. Today's Voices on Art book pick is The Hare with the Amber Eyes by Edmund de Waal. In German, it's Der Hase mit den Bernsteinaugen. Edmund de Waal himself is an artist, a ceramicist, and in this book he tells the history of his family embodied in the artworks of Netzke. So I wrote a little bit down for you because it's quite a specific book. So The Hare with the Amber Eyes, it's a wonderful example of how works of art can preserve and convey history. Edmund de Waal uses a collection of Japanese Netzke, which are like little carved artworks in stone or wood or ivory, horn, and he uses them as a common thread to recount the history of his family, the Jewish banking dynasty Ephusi, its rise and fall, from the Parisian art scene of the 19th century to the wealth and splendor of Vienna, to expropriation and expulsion under National Socialism, and further, almost into his own pocket where he carries a small Netzke with him. So the Netzke, as I said, it's small carved artworks. They serve as a leitmotif for survival, beauty and memory. They link Paris, Vienna, Odessa, Tokyo and London in a panorama spanning 150 years of history. And for him, and also for us, the figures are not just objects, but they are carriers of stories, of feelings and memories across generations. So this is also what a museum does, to preserve those things in the form of artwork. This book combines over 150 years of eventful family history, European cultural history, and personal reflection, impressively demonstrating that art objects can be more than just possessions. They can be living witnesses to personal and collective history. And I very much recommend this book. It's really a joy to read it. We can learn a lot from it, but it has just this joyful expression what art can mean and what art can carry for us and in history. Edmund de Waal, The Hare with the Amber Eyes. Thanks. Please find links and a text about my guest in the show notes. For more information on Voices on Art, the Van Horn Gallery podcast, visit our website van-horn.net. Follow us on our YouTube channel, Van Horn Gallery. On Instagram at Voices on Art and at van_horn_Düsseldorf. And subscribe to Voices on Art on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the platform of your choice. And leave your rating if you like it. Thank you for listening to Voices on Art, the Van Horn Gallery podcast hosted by Daniela Steinfeld. Stay tuned and connect.